And one of those local politicians realized my father had been caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mails and told him he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would sell me into the CIA's MK Ultra mind control project.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We have the author of this book, Trance Formation of America, Cathy O'Brien, is with us. In that book, she recounts being subjected to systematic torture and mind control programming from a young age in the CIA's notorious MK Ultra program. She has remained a vocal whistleblower, sharing her story through various media and advocating for awareness about mind control and trauma. Welcome to the show, Cathy O'Brien. Hi, Cathy.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
I appreciate it. You know, I was reading your book, and it's really it's disturbing to say the least. And the fact that what would you want people to know about your book? It sounds almost too fantastical to be true, but you've testified, and there hasn't been any libel suits against you. So I'm going to say it's true. Tell people what you think they should know about it.
Well, I've been speaking out on MK Ultra mind control and healing from it for over 35 years. And my 1995 testimony for Congress, Trance Formation of America, was censored under national security because every bit of it had been validated by clean members of intelligence, law enforcement, Secret Service. All the evidence was just glaring. It was there. We just have no justice system to prosecute through, and didn't have a Congress that could even hear the testimony of this information because it was 1995. Bill Clinton was president, and he's named in Trance Formation of America, so it was censored. National security was invoked on it. That means that I wasn't able to see any justice, and I'll never see any justice other than what I consider to be the ultimate justice of positive change through public awareness. You know, awareness is key. And the reason they invoke national security is because knowledge is our defense against mind control. And mind control is being used to usher in a globalist slave society agenda that we're all experiencing today. So they didn't want people to have the information. They didn't want them to know what it was. In 1995, Transformation of America would have looked prophetic because I knew who was going to be placed in the office of president until Hillary Clinton was supposed to usher in the New World Order in 2016. So obviously that didn't happen, and that's because so many people are awake and aware and have embraced the truth.
And so tell people how this started, the mind control aspect of this is amazing. So they actually have been studying how to control people's minds. They can put you in some sort of trance, and they could then you are then their robot to use as they want. So how did it start with you?
Well, I was deep in the swamp with the perpetrators that steal elections and fund their globalist agenda with drug and human trafficking, and who use mind control to usher in their agenda. And the formula for mind control is the same, whether it's of an individual, a nation, a military, a classroom, a church, or the world. And trauma is the basis of it. The formula for mind control came into the U.S. in the wake of World War II through Project Paperclip. And I encourage everybody, research that for yourself, look into it, because with them came the formula for mind control. And that trauma-based mind control had been found through the Hitler-Himmler research. There's no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while the brain is still forming. That's because it shuts down the trauma, shuts down neuron pathways in the brain, represses it deep into the subconscious so the rest of the mind can develop and function normally. Well, as neuron pathways shut down, we become more suggestible and easily led. The fact that I was born into a multi-generational incest-based family made me a target for MK Ultra mind control. And it was so simple how it happened in my experience, because my father was sexually and ritually abused. My mother was sexually abused and trafficked to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. That Blue Masonic Lodge keeps all these secret societies are keeping secrets on mind control. Just like the National Security Act that came into play in 1947 has been used to suppress this pertinent information. And so the information on mind control has been kept from society for a long time. And that's where the local politicians and law enforcement hung out, at my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge. So my father's sexual abuse of me that started in infancy extended into child pornography. This was in Muskegon, Michigan, back in around 1960, because I was born in 1957, and I was used in the child pornography. I was also being trafficked to my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge to local politicians. And one of those local politicians realized my father had been caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mails, and told him he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would sell me into the CIA's MK mind control project. This shows how long our justice system has been corrupted by so-called national security to allow for the proliferation of pedophilia, the pedophile agendas, a mind control agenda. That's why it's been allowed to go on. This politician was Gerald Ford, and that's the same Gerald Ford that went on to become the unelected president of the United States. So as his political career escalated, so too did my victimization in MK Ultra mind control, until I was used on a White House Pentagon level.
You name a lot of high-profile politicians that everybody's name would they would recognize their name. And you know, when you mentioned Gerald Ford and how you met him on a ship on the Lake Michigan, and your father was running drugs and the whole deal, it made me like he's the perfect guy, because he doesn't look like a nefarious devil, a Satan guy, kind of child rapist or anything like that. He looks like this unassuming, oh shucks kind of a guy. And of course, he was instrumental in covering up the JFK assassination, which is why he was on the Warren Commission, which is why he was allowed to be, which is why he was installed as president. And so, of course, he's the most nefarious of them. That's what they look like. When the devil comes, he's not going to be wearing horns. He's going to be wearing a crew neck sweater and glasses. And so that's what I always say. Or he's going to be looking like Gerald Ford. So so that's what it was. So they had caught your father with child porn going through the U.S. mail, and then that's what got him the impetus for him to then sell you into the CIA MK Ultra program. And how old were you then?
I was around 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old. I was full on in the project, but I'd been trafficked to Ford at my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge as a little bitty toddler. So it's a blurred line in that regard for when it all started, because MK Ultra has been a part of my my whole life ever since I was born. By the time that I was sold into the project, I was being used in blackmail videos at the Epstein Island of its time, Mackinac Island, Michigan, which is where the governor's mansion is located.
That's notorious too. There's a whole Franklin scandal story about that. They're all over the place.
Yeah, it's a notoriously bad place, and like I said, it was the Epstein Island of its time. That's where these globalists, these local politicians, the state politicians, and global leaders would meet and discuss how they were going to use this mind control formula on the population, infiltrate the school systems, the churches, society as a whole, the media, and all of that. So they don't trust each other either. So they hold each other by the blackmail, so to speak. So those blackmail videos were being made then, and I was used in them for the first 30 years of my life.
And so like frats. Like these college frats that you hear about. First of all, I don't know why we have college fraternities. It's very strange. What is a fraternity for? Like you're going to get together and hook each other up later in life secretly, and everybody thinks that's normal. So imagine the worst thing you heard about a college frat, but it's the most powerful people in the world, and they have no consequences for any crazy shit they do. What do you think they'd get up to? Well, it's in Cathy's book.
Right.
So,
right.
You were a victim of Gerald Ford's. He molested you?
Yes, as a little bitty child. And by the time I was sold into the project and taken to Mackinac Island, Michigan, I was also subjected to Pierre Trudeau, who was a prime minister of Canada, and he was a master of mind control of individuals and nations. So at Mackinac Island, Michigan, where I also met who had become my owner in MK Ultra, and that was U.S. Senator Robert C. Byrd. So as you'll notice, I'm mentioning Democrats and Republicans. I'm mentioning various global leaders because they've all been in this together. It doesn't matter about party lines or even nations to this globalist agenda.
So Trudeau from Canada also raped you, is what you're saying, when you were a child?
Yes, 9, when I was 9.
When you were 9 years old. Okay. And so that started with Gerald Ford. So you mentioned a lot of other, you mentioned Robert Byrd. Now, I don't know if people remember Robert Byrd. I do. He was a former Grand Wizard of the KKK who became a senator who Joe Biden bragged about working with.
Obama spoke in his eulogy. Also, his reason is, I just joined because I thought it would help me politically, and somehow that's a good answer. Somehow people are like, oh, great. He wasn't. So not only you're worse than a KKK, basically. You joined that horrible thing because you're that much of a phony that you would join something that evil just to get it. Like, it's absurd. It really is.
So
it is.
And so Robert Byrd, in the book, you talk about how he was a sadist, right? And he liked to beat you.
He was extremely violent, and he used that for mind control purposes because, again, trauma is a basis of mind control. And he was acutely aware of that. And he was all about control. It's not about perversion. It's about control. It's same as it is when children are sexually assaulted. It's about control and power. It's not about any kind of perversion. Yeah, Senator Byrd was in office for over 50 years and was very in high positions of power and influence. And when we understand that and start seeing what occurred during his time, how our country was sold out to this globalist agenda and the erosion of our constitutional values of freedom and justice for all occurred under his watch.
And so you also identify Dick Cheney in the book, and Bill Richardson, who people might not remember. I do remember from the Clinton administration. I think he was also governor of New Mexico.
Yeah,
and
named as an Epstein visitor. Leahy chapter really creeped me out because when he put that book out when he retired about how he was told Iraq was fake, and this is before I knew this story in your book. And I was watching Broken Points with Chris Lasaga, and it was talking about how somebody from an agency gives him a note that it's not a good thing to go to Iraq, and he just kept it to himself the whole time until he wrote his book. And I was like, wow, what a hero! Thank you for
wow.
Thank you for not revealing that until now in your book. So right then I'm like, that's kind of creepy. Then when I heard the chapter in your book, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That adds up.
So go ahead.
A lot of the people that I mentioned, when you look at Ford's cabinet, you'll find that most of them were in his cabinet because he had George Bush to head his CIA. He had Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld. Rumsfeld's the one who gave us aspartame that dumbs people down and loses their critical analysis with that artificial sweetener. Gave us pharmaceuticals in our food. He had Henry Kissinger. Anybody can look it up. It's even in Wikipedia. You can look it up. They did the first depopulation agenda, came up with that together. Gerald Ford and Henry Kissinger. He had Nelson Rockefeller, and he had Jack Valenti, who was the head of the Motion Picture Association of America. Jack Valenti is the one who gave us the term conspiracy theory for anyone who questioned the Kennedy narrative.
It wasn't the Dulleses. They were using a term he gave them?
That was the one that came through the media, through the repetitive media narrative. And that way, if it comes, repetition is the most basic form of mind control 3 times, and it goes into the subconscious.
Yeah, the comedy rule of 3s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you also so there was Reagan's so it was Ronald Reagan also you mentioned in the book, and you also mentioned his Secretary of Education, I'm blanking on his name, who wrote that book, the book of William Bennett. He wrote the book of Virtues. Of course, a guy who writes a book who's a politician who writes a book called the Book of Virtues. Of course, that's the most nefarious, evil guy in the world. Can you tell me a little bit about Bill Bennett and Ronald Reagan?
Well, I can talk about Bill Bennett and Lamar Alexander. He was the education secretary just prior to, and they worked together to bring in the global education program, which was based on Hitler's youth, that kind of indoctrination of the children, so that it teaches them what to think rather than how to think. And those two aligned. Well, Lamar Alexander was a blatant Satanist, and Bill Bennett was a Jesuit, and the two, there's no difference between the two on that level, because they were all about controlling the minds of the children and how they could best do it. And they took writing by hand out of the school system, because writing by hand activates the logic critical analysis part of the brain. It's part of processing information. It's part of how to think. So they took that out of the school system and put in computerization, because typing does not activate the same part of the brain the same way. And that's all detailed, because I worked under those education secretaries in the mid-'80s, so that by 1984, they had put the full indoctrination into the school system. So we've got several generations now that have been just fully indoctrinated.
And so so was it Senator Byrd who got you introduced to Reagan and those people in Bennett, and that's how you started to work for them?
Senator Byrd was, as my owner, directed my activities. He decided who I would be prostituted to, what black ops I would be forced to work, who my handler would be, how I would be traveling to and from various places. And he had a lot of power and influence that way. So, yes, he is the one who had introduced me to Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan was what was experienced in my testimony, Transformation of America, is 100% true and is absolutely spot on. What is omitted from that testimony, was not allowed to be in there, was the fact that Ronald Reagan was horribly manipulated ever since his assassination attempt. The assassination attempt was because he was not cooperating with the globalist agenda. Since he wasn't cooperating, they were going to eliminate him. Of course, he didn't die, but they maintained, George Bush and Dick Cheney maintained control of his administration from that point forward. So, we need to look and wonder, what would Reagan have done if he had been in control of his administration? Would he have allowed for this mass indoctrination of our children? Would he have sold out our constitutional values? I don't think
he never would have got there. He never would have been a president if he was a guy. They groom him from George W. Bush. I mean, this is a joke, Cathy, that I later saw you talking about this. Mm-hmm. I used to make a joke to Gutfeld and them over Fox that W got hunted through the woods as a kid, yes, naked by Dick Cheney, like that Ice-T movie, Surviving the Game. That's a dumb joke I made. And then I hear you go, yeah, no, that's what they did.
That is what they did. And they do groom presidents. In Reagan's case, whatever they expected from him, if he was cooperating with this deep state globalist agenda, they would not have had to use mind control, and they would not have tried to take him out. So that in itself, is a massive statement. And it gave George Bush and Dick Cheney power throughout his administration. Having been there in the White House with him on numerous occasions, I can assure you they treated him like dirt. Horrible.
An actor. He's an actor. In your book, by the way, you don't shy away from the rotten things he did. You know what I mean? Like you expose the whole thing. It had me down for about 3 days after I heard it. And I didn't even believe in this crap in the beginning, the government. But I didn't know how bad it is. Like, you could just see the whole mafia, what they did. It's all there in the book, and it's very easy to correlate it. Madeleine Albright, that's a great one, because when I started working on Jimmy's show 3 years ago, and we played the clip of her being asked if it was worth it to starve 500,000 kids to death in Iraq, and she goes, "I think it is." As soon as I heard your book, I know you can correlate that. If she's cool with that, she's definitely cool with the stuff she did in your book.
Yeah, absolutely. And she was just laying the groundwork for Epstein Island. She was working the Caribbean operations, the OAS, the Organization of American States, running MK Ultra mind control slaves like myself through to handle the drugs for the CIA's cocaine operations. So she was heavily involved in drug and human trafficking, especially child sex trafficking, what was going on in Haiti, and set up the Virgin Islands, the Epstein Island, all that aspect. She was absolutely horrible. And like Senator Byrd, she was Hillary Clinton's mentor, and anybody can find Hillary singing those two praises, which is absolutely disgusting.
And so, I mean, the details in the book are, again, I had to put the book down many times. It was really disturbing of what happened to you, what those people do on the regular, and how they can do that to children is just mind blowing. Yeah. And that these are the people who are in control, and that's how they keep control of everyone, right? With this blackmail, and that's why. Right now, Dan Bongino is going to quit the FBI, and so it looks like they're going to quit over this Epstein thing because they don't want to go along with it anymore because their reputations have been completely trashed by lying about Epstein. Yeah. But of course, they have to keep the Epstein lie going because if they don't, it will blow up the whole control of our government. I mean, that's really how they
can't release it ever because it's not just Israel, even though that's a big part of it. It's the entire government, except for Massey and a couple people,
right?
The whole thing collapses if they were. And what blew my mind was when Juliet was on and said they disclosed Monarch was a thing in 2024. Even that Seymour Hersh thing that he got. Remember the link she said? And I'm obsessed with this stuff, and I had no idea. They've already said we did this in so many words in an official release. And I try to tell this to people, they blank out. They're like, I don't want to deal with that. You see what a great safe for your secrets, shame and pain and torture are to children? You can use them as an iPhone. You can hide stuff in them, but nobody can crack it. Well, eventually it leaks, apparently, because you're telling your story. I don't know if you know J.R. Sweet, who was also owned by Robert Byrd. He was on Emma's podcast, and he correlates a bunch of stuff that you were talking about, and it gets real creepy.
Well, there's so much information coming out these days, and people have been following the money, and they see that it all goes to a handful of self-appointed, self-anointed global puppet masters. And, Big Pharma is a major part of it. Control over the media is a big part of it because they're trying to control our information so we don't know the truth. But people are realizing that. They're following the money and finding that the most lucrative business in the world is child sex trafficking, and it's drug and human trafficking across open borders. So people realize that. They saw 2020 when mind control masked as a virus was unleashed on the global population so that they could get back some of their control. The very first thing they did when they stole elections so blatantly right in front of everybody is fling that border back open to their funding mechanism of drug and human trafficking. So people are connecting these dots now. They are seeing more and more. The disbelief is not anything like it was when I started speaking out in 1990. I mean, people get it now. Not only did they get it, but they're taking action. They're saying, okay, the system's too corrupt. We've got all these children who are being taken out of this human trafficking operation that need a safe place to be. They can't go into the corrupted child protective services. And so they're taking action. And, to see people taking action because they're awake and aware is, it's the ultimate justice for me. I'm so excited about it. It's so encouraging to see people finally remembering that we have all the power. And these perpetrators only have as much power as we give them or let them steal. It's time to wake up. It's time for us to, remember who we are and why we're here, and start, governing our own lives, live our own power.
So, reading your book, I couldn't help but, just you recount the horrific crimes against a child that were perpetrated on you sexually and by the most powerful people in the country, and you name names. And so what you have not been, I was having this conversation with Steph, and I'm like, well, this is hard to believe because it's so horrific. It's so demonic and it's so pervasive. But at the same time, this book is out there and you have not been sued by anyone, correct?
Right, because national security was invoked on it. And it's also important to note that in 1988, intelligence insider Mark Phillips, who was working the highest of levels of intelligence mind sciences to preserve the sanctity of free thought, was absolutely appalled to see what was going on with people like myself, like my daughter, who were being used under MK Ultra mind control. He was disgusted to see little children being taken in and out of the White House. He saw how blackmail was being used to erode our constitutional values. And he wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people in intelligence. Back then, there were a lot of people in Congress that were deeply concerned over what was happening and wanted to take action. So the movement to get this information out was a massive effort that wasn't even limited to the United States, because it's a globalist global agenda, and it was a global effort to get this truth out there and get the information told. So it's really no surprise that that the information is out there. What's difficult is how long it took for people to get it, because the national security and the censorship have taken its toll. And here we are today. If that information had got out in 1995, we would not be in this position that we are today.
Plus the muddying the waters they do. They throw out.
Right.
No, the more people are aware of this, you're going to see more UFO hearings. I promise.
Yeah.
You're going to see.
Yes.
Right. And
exactly.
And they all do this creepy thing where they always try to it's like they're not lying, but it's deceptive, right? So they'll be like, no, we didn't do this, but this has happened many times. The Diddy thing in 2009, yeah. I didn't know, on Reddit, all of young Hollywood was on Reddit telling these horrible stories. Never heard of it, never heard about it. Years later, when Diddy's going to be fine because the Comeys are involved, now I hear about it. So they think they can get away with it because they have.
Yeah, they have.
Comes out, they do a little bit limited hangout to muddy the water, and then we all move on to the next war. The only reason I would pick up on it is because how many times can you fool somebody with the same trick? You know what I mean? Like, sooner or later, you're going to catch on. I don't think I'm that far ahead of the class. It took me 20 years to put it together. So I don't think that's particularly smart. I'm just slightly ahead where I'm like, I could see it, but if I could see it, that means we're not far away from a lot of people seeing it, is how I take it.
Yeah, there's so many people awake and aware that they overrode the rigged electronic algorithm in 2016 to elect a president that was not Hillary Clinton in the New World Order. There were that many people onto it then. So nobody was expecting that. It caused a lot of chaos with this globalist agenda. And they started getting frantic, and as they did, they went all in with Mind Control Masters of Virus 2016. They always said that they would, if people were started waking up and they couldn't control the people with mind control, that they would have to put our numbers down to a much more manageable size. And I think that's what Mind Control Masters of Virus was all about. And it's also why the pedophile agenda moved into the transgender movement. It is a depopulation agenda because there's no more human procreation. So we're being attacked frantically from many sides, and still, the numbers of the people who are awake and aware on a global scale have already passed critical mass. So it's a matter of staying awake through the imposed traumas, because again, trauma is a basis of mind control. It's why we experience so many. It's why 9/11 happened. It's why the Kennedy assassination happened, and it traumatized the whole nation. They took over then. Look, in the wake of the Kennedy assassination became the electronic voting machines. They were rigged since their inception. Yeah. They were rigged to place these globalist leaders right up until 2016, when we overrode the algorithm. That is a true count of numbers, not some stupid poll that is designed to lie and manipulate people. But that was something that actually happened by sheer numbers. So that's deeply encouraging. There's more awake and aware now after Mind Control Masters of Virus, woke more people up ultimately.
I think it backfired on them.
It did.
The internet, because the way you describe, they can't trust each other.
Right.
People are lying up the pyramid too. It's not just them lying down at you. People are trying to move up like the scumbags are. So they're lying to the leaders who aren't getting accurate data, even though they're spying on everyone.
Yeah. So you got it figured, man. That's just brilliantly stated. Yeah.
So Cathy, how did you manage to not commit suicide? Because people have killed themselves who have been through a tenth of the trauma that you've been through. You've been through unbelievable amounts of trauma. How do you think you were able to survive without committing suicide? And tell us about how you eventually broke from that mind control.
Well, they definitely go together because, like I said, intelligence insider Mark Phillips lifted my daughter and me right out of the Washington, D.C. human trafficking swamp back in 1988. That's way before most people even knew there was a swamp, or, that Democrats and Republicans were involved, or that our children were being sexualized, or that mind control even existed. But still, Mark handed me keys to my own mind, because information on our own mind-brain function, our birthright information that is our defense against mind control, was buried under national security. Mark found that too, and he was livid. He's like, why is this not in mental health? Why is this not in the medical community? Why is this not in education? And it's because it empowers us to have the knowledge that's our defense against mind control. So he handed me keys to my own mind, reminded me that we all have the power to heal and reclaim our free thought, our free will, soul expression, strength of spirit, tap into that infinite power of love, remember who we are and why we're here, and live our life's purpose. But it was a journey. It was, because when I started remembering, Mark told me, he said, write out your memory, because the very act of moving a pen activates the logic part of the brain. So it takes repressed traumatic memory, shifts it over to logic, where it's written out on paper, consciously seen, and healing happens psychiatrically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, everything all at once, with this one simple brain hack. Everybody everywhere can use it. Write out your fear, write out your trauma, write out whatever's immobilizing you, write out your grief, and then add a solution. Because if you add a solution, you force your brain to fire in new ways. You lift out of that dark pit of negativity. You are able to see a clear path forward and think for yourself. So after 30 years of MK Ultra mind control, I didn't even know how to think. But voicing no negatives without a solution, as Mark told me, forced me to have to think and use my brain. So as all this is happening, and I'm remembering these horrific things, what my daughter went through, the most torturous thing of all, I told Mark, I said, I can't live with myself. I can't live with myself after what I had to do. And he said, you're not responsible for what you're tortured to do under mind control. Your abusers are. And they need to be held accountable for their actions. Same way, people who got the injection or had their kids get the injection are seeing the horrific results of that. They need to realize they were mind controlled with a repetitive media narrative. They were traumatized, thinking, it was do or die. And they need to see the puppet masters who told us that be held accountable for those actions. Well, when Mark told me that, it was that they needed to be held accountable. It was like, okay, then if I have a blank, clean slate right now, then I am going to make sure everything I do going forward is in harmony with love, with purpose, with peace, and light of truth. And I made that decision right then. I went deep within myself to find out, who I am. I couldn't figure that out from outside input or daily affirmations or anything like that. And I found out at the base core energy of my being that I am love. And it was like, oh, I don't have to love myself. I just have to live the love I am. So once I learned to live the love I am, then I was able to live my life's purpose. I was able to absolutely stay steadfast and not in that everything I did was out of love and not being triggered. That opening the neuron pathways in the brain frees repressed, traumatized memories so it can't be triggered anymore. It all opens once those neuron pathways are open. Survivors can't be triggered anymore, but that healing has to come from within. It cannot happen through outside input, especially not through hypnosis or, whatever else they got out there. It's within us. We've been blessed with that capability for the resiliency of body, mind, and spirit all along. We just forgot. We need to re-access it, and picking up that pen and paper helps us to access it and reconnect and be able to, align with the divine within to have the strength to be able to move forward. So, no, suicide was not in my equation. My daughter had been thrust into the so-called Child Protective Services, which is no more than a catch net operation for trafficked children. And Senator Byrd set that up with his office in the FBI building back in the mid-'80s. So what I saw being set up, I saw my daughter being thrust into. They medically kidnapped her. She was in the hospital, and they just took custody. So I was fighting for her. It was love for her that compelled me forward. I had no time for self-pity. I had no time to be thinking of, woe is me, I need to suicide. No, it doesn't work that way. And I overcame all the death programs that had been instilled because I deprogrammed the program first in writing out the memory. All those techniques, those simple little reminders that Mark taught me are posted on my website. At trance-formation.com. Anybody can have it and access that information. It's in PTSD, Time to Heal. It's a little tiny workbook. It's not about me. It's about us all, because we all can heal no matter what in the world happened to us. We can overcome that grief. We can get past any suicidal thoughts. We can get past any death programming. It's within us to be able to do that, because we have more power over our own minds than any negative outside influence could ever have.
Do you fear for life, for your life? Have there been any attempts on you because you've got this incendiary information that you actually are getting out to the people?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's been walking a very fine legal line, Mark and I were definitely under the gun. There's numerous times we wondered, wow, well, okay, we made it through that. We're still here. I mean, that's all detailed in my book, Access Denied for Reasons of National Security. Our journey through the system was very precarious. I have no fear. We had no fear because fear is what they want. Fear is a basis of mind control. These perpetrators haven't been around them. They're very low vibration, dark negative energy force. They feed off of hatred. They feed off of fear. They feed off of trauma. They feed off of division. And they got that the first 30 years of my life. They're not going to get any more of that from me. So I'm just going to keep living the love I am. That's the highest vibration. It's out of their reach. They can't get there from their low little place. That would be like darkness creeping in on light. And I just stay focused on bringing truth to light and making a positive difference for the children's sake, because there's a lot of children right now that need to know that they can heal too once they're in a safe place, not Child Protective Services, but in a legitimate safe place. We all can heal.
So do you think, do you have an opinion on the president of France, Macron? He's now, it's been known that his wife, at the very least, was 40 years old when he was 14 or 15 years
48,
old.
48, and he was 15. And they would raise the age every year in the paper to cover up that he was 15.
Yeah. So do you think that he's a victim of mind control?
I think it's just very good that people are asking these questions, because people are starting to wonder about the various government leaders now. For a while, they were taking baby steps on looking into MK Ultra mind control with people like Britney Spears and Michael Jackson and what happened at Disney.
Kanye.
Yes, Kanye, absolutely. How many
People
times
blame him. And I go, do you think it's weird that his personal trainer can have him committed? I had a personal trainer once. I didn't give them power of attorney. Doesn't that a strange thing to anyone?
Yeah, except he was talking about MK Ultra mind control before he was fully healed and could still be triggered. And I'm so concerned for survivors who speak out too soon and can still be triggered, because a lot of times they're manipulated too, either triggered back in or used to undermine legitimate operations and stuff. It's just it's important that people heal first. And the more we understand about mind control, the more we're going to recognize what in the world is going on around us. We'll start understanding more about, like looking at what happened with Justin Trudeau, looking at what happened with George Bush Jr. Those are close here, but we need to be considering that this globalist agenda has been taking over power of countries for a long time. And
they tell you. They've
Yes,
been open about it. The rules-based order, the West. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Will the West fall? All this stuff came from the West. Good. I hope it does.
Yeah, it's got to stop. Truth is coming to light, and it's because of people like you guys right here, right now. Bringing that truth out and opening people's eyes to start questioning everything that's going on in this world around them, because we need to do that. This administration is doing a lot to clean things up, but the power's been handed back to the people. It's up to us. The swamp doesn't drain from the top down. It drains from the bottom up, and we all need to wake up, open our eyes, and start making a difference, and stop following these leaders that we didn't elect.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people had a lot of hope in the Trump administration. It seems like they got either that was always a ruse, or they got to him because he's going right along with the cover-up of the Epstein thing, and that seems to be unbelievable. But listen,
I got told that he got Jesuit programmed by somebody and didn't want to believe it. I still don't want to believe it, but
I don't.
Okay,
I don't, because the perpetrators that I was around feared Trump back in the mid '80s. Because he was adamantly opposing drug and human trafficking, the use of MK Ultra mind control slaves like me in the State Department. He opposed all of that openly back then. He opposed the sexualization of children. They feared him because they couldn't control him. He knew about mind control. He had the knowledge. Right. That's defense against mind control. So no, he's not definitely.
It'd be cool if he'd say something though, and not
mind control. He couldn't be coerced. He couldn't be blackmailed. He couldn't be paid up. He had his own security, he had his own money, whatever. So they feared him back then. I think when you consider the magnitude of this globalist mess that needs to unravel, unless the people do their part, I don't know how it can clean up. You know what I mean? Yes. So we instead of judging every little thing that's going on, we need to start understanding the magnitude of what all it entails. And, on the Epstein thing alone, from my point of view, I was deeply concerned that the list would show the victims, the victimizers, and the whistleblowers, because there was a time I would have been on those planes. My name would have been right there. Right. I was in those places. I was used in the horrible capacities. And, when we consider that, then just to have a list until people understand about mind control, it's not going to help. When we understand that some people who were on those flights were in a position like Mark Phillips was, from the highest levels of intelligence, mind sciences, he was over intelligence. He could be any place. He could be CIA, NSA, FBI, Secret Service, whatever he needed to be. Well, he was in places and horrified to see what was going on. He couldn't even be a whistleblower. He was bound by laws of sedition. So look what he did. He took action. This has been, we've been screaming now. Mark and I screamed for over 30 years together. Mark passed away in 2017. And I'm just carrying on our shared life's purpose. And I'm going to just keep bringing this truth to light, because it's until people understand about mind control, the mess can't be cleaned up properly. We've got to open our eyes, do our part, and start taking responsibility for our own lives. Take back our own power. Stop giving it away to big government, big tech, big cult religion. We've been conditioned to that for generations.
Have you seen Sam Harris and them telling you there's no free will? I love that.
Yeah.
There's a whole scientific thing. There's none for him, I'm sure, because that guy talks like he's in a trance every time I see him. I also know stuff about him, and I know he's an alcoholic and all this other crap. It's such a false, and they got that scientism thing about them. So friends of mine that aren't that discerning, that they go, oh, that's a scientist, man. They're like, oh, he's really smart. And he's saying things that are objectively stupid,
Yeah, and, MK Ultra is a scientific formula.
Yeah.
And it's one that includes sleep, food, and water deprivation. People wonder why our food is being bioengineered and genetically altered to starve our brains. Why our water's tainted with fluoride. It stops our ability to have our brain fire properly. Working 9 to 5, 5 to 9 to get food on the table that has new nutrition keeps people exhausted. And we're not thinking clear then. These are a scientific formula for MK Ultra mind control. So, when we look at science, that's one thing. When we start to realize, oh, they're using mind control. Ultimately, it is a spiritual warfare, because without free thought, there's no free will. With no free will, there's no soul expression. If we don't have soul expression, we don't have compassion, discernment of truth. We don't have an ability to gather the strength of the human spirit and the infinite power of love and stand up and make a difference. Well, having been around the perpetrators, that's their greatest fear. Is the strength of the human spirit. Their greatest fear is that we're going to remember that we have that power, that we're going to wake up, reclaim our free thought, free will, strength of spirit. That's their worst nightmare. They can't stop our strength of spirit. They can't possess it, even though that satanically they want us to think that, or when they want to play the alien game, you know, that it's beyond our realm to affect, and they're going to take our spirit, you know, or whatever. It's all just designed to make us feel helpless, and mind control is used for that. And that's all they can do is use trauma after trauma and mind control to keep us from accessing that strength of spirit. Because as soon as we do, it's game over. We win, they lose, and they know it. So they're just trying to keep us from that. You look at the scientific formula for mind control, and you have the knowledge that's our defense against it, and ultimately that's our spiritual victory.
Cathy O'Brien, author of Trance Formation of America, all about the systematic torture and mind control programs that the CIA runs through MK Ultra. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for the book. Everybody should check out the book. There it is right over my shoulder, Trance Formation of America, the true story of CIA mind control. Thank you very much. It's been your book is amazing. It's full with information that everybody should be aware of. And thanks for your courage and for speaking out. And I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
Okay, Cathy.
Nice to meet you, Cathy.
Nice to meet you.
I have really pushed the book a lot on Audible. I texted to everybody. I'm just listening to the book. Just listen to it.
Yeah. Tell everybody about PTSD, Time to Heal. Everybody needs it to reclaim that free thought, free will.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Toronto, Red Bank, New Jersey, Northampton, Massachusetts, Concord, New Hampshire, Oxnard, California, Rutherford, New Jersey, New York, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.